Have you ever wondered why most guys over 40 seem to spin their wheels when it comes to hybrid training? Now, I've been doing this for 30 years and I can tell you exactly why this happens. The reason is because they don't have a system for eating, training, or recovery. It's just a bunch of random stuff. It's like throwing everything you own at the wall and hoping something sticks. So I'm going to show you how I stay lean, strong, and high performing, even at 54, with a routine that I've crafted over decades working with clients. And the first thing that needs to be addressed is how to properly program hybrid training. Hybrid training is all about the perception of lifting weights and running. But the reality is that hybrid really means two very different things combined together. So it could really be about any kind of strength, such as displaying high levels of gymnastic skills like front levers or back levers, and any kind of endurance, such as riding or rowing, as well as running. And that means for us, as long as it's about strength plus endurance, it really counts as hybrid. And that's lucky because the first problem with hybrid training over 40 is that a lot of over 40s have problems with running. I've had so many clients come to me who've been making no progress from bashing their heads against the wall, feeling like they need to be running if they want to be a hybrid athlete over 40. Giving them permission to use a different form of endurance training allows them to quickly start making progress again and makes them much happier with their own training. So think of hybrid training as a choose your own adventure where you can pick from a multitude of endurance activities, not just running. But with so many possible variables, how do you program this? Hybrid's roots are always in athletic strength and conditioning. Athletes have always wanted to be as strong as possible and as fit as possible at the same time. And back when I started 30 years ago, we did just call this strength and conditioning. And we achieved elite levels of strength and conditioning with athletes using this thing called the Conjugate system. And what this did was focus on very specific qualities of both strength and endurance. For instance, for strength, we'd have days where we focused on the amount of volume we did, the speed of the lifts, or even just the total weight that we lifted. And for running, we'd focus on general endurance, threshold work, and anaerobic intervals. And while that sounds like a great, well-rounded plan, the reality is for it to work, you need to be an elite athlete. That's probably not applicable to most of us. So think of Conjugate like a Formula One car. It's great for the best drivers in the world, but not so good for us to go to the supermarket. And while I don't think you need to be an elite to make it work, you probably need to hit decent numbers. As some baselines, if you can't deadlift at least 2 times body weight or run a sub 20-minute 5K, you're probably not ready for conjugate training, and that's backed up by decades of research by Soviet scientists who invented conjugate training in the first place. And what they found is that the best method of training for the rest of us is this thing called concurrent training. And I know that sounds really similar, conjugate, concurrent, but it's a much more well-rounded approach, which for those of us who aren't elite athletes focused on one specific thing, creates much better athletes. In a concurrent approach, we focus on strength, speed and power, aerobic endurance, anaerobic endurance, and a whole bunch of different physical qualities so that we end up as a well-rounded athletic adult. And the biggest benefit for this, for over 40s, is that you're not getting worn down all the time by constantly having to push heavy weights. When I switch clients over to this concurrent approach, a lot of the joint pain they've been experiencing from trying to push heavy all the time goes away almost instantly. And that means they can actually train harder and make more progress. Now let's bust some myths on hybrid programming. There are 3 myths that seem to be at the top of the list when it comes to hybrid programming. The first of which is that sessions have to be long. The truth is that even your biggest endurance session doesn't need to go past 90 minutes, and that you can achieve a lot with all of your other sessions under 60 minutes. And that's because using a concurrent model, each session will only have a singular focus, rather than trying to hit multiple qualities all at the same time. The second of these is that you must be competing in something. You don't have to sign up for events. In fact, I encourage clients to have experiences, not events. For sure, spend time in the gym building strength and fitness, but then use that strength and fitness to go and have epic adventures like I do with my wife with mountaineering. You're going to have way better stories in the nursing home talking about that mountain you climbed with your wife than you are talking about the 17th marathon you did. And finally, it's that endurance training is going to make you weaker and smaller. And that's actually only going to happen if you don't fuel it right. As an example, I hit a lifetime squat PR in the middle of running 70 or 80 kilometers a week, but I'd spent years building up to that. And the same thing happens to my clients. I can't count the number of times I've seen people hit strength PRs in the middle of peak weeks before big endurance events. Now we've got some of the BS out of the way, let's talk about how to make it work for you. Now the first step won't be popular, but it's ditch your sleep tracker. The reasons for that are really simple. Firstly, no one changes their training load based on what the sleep tracker says anyway. What's the point of having that metric if you're not going to follow the advice given by it? And secondly, if you don't know whether or not you've had a good night's sleep just based on how you feel, you've got bigger problems than your training program. Now, while these metrics like sleep and HRV can be important, what research shows with experienced athletes is that HRV metrics and how they instinctively feel about their readiness to train actually come out about the same. So while they have worth as a beginner, the truth is that if you're thinking hybrid, you're an experienced athlete and you should have some good instincts regarding your readiness to train anyway. And I've seen this with so many clients, and the first thing I suggest is get rid of the sleep tracker. Usually their sleep quality improves because they stop stressing about how much sleep they're getting based on what the metric on their watch says. And secondly, they learn to actually feel and understand the things that are truly impacting their sleep and address those things rather than just worry about a number that they see on a screen. And as a final point, if you think about it, we all recognize that having more electronics in the bedroom is a bad idea. It doesn't really matter whether it's your phone or whether it's a watch, it's all electronics. The goal should be to get as many of the electronics out of the bedroom as possible and learn to use your instincts about whether or not you had a good night's sleep and how ready to train you are. But now we've talked about recovery, how about progress? How do we make sure we progress? There's a saying that says the most common problem for men over 40 and the reason they get hurt is trying to train like a younger man. And they usually attempt to go from 0 to full speed in a single workout. Not even joking, I saw a comment yesterday on a post on Facebook where a guy hadn't trained for a while, did a single workout, trying to use the same weights that he'd used a few years previously and gave himself rhabdo from a single workout. And it's always the same. You remember what it felt like to be strong and fit. You forget the time it took to get there in the first place. And that's because your fitness is like a retirement account. You won't be rich overnight. It takes years to build that up to be something special and worth having around. And that's because progress only needs to be as much as a single rep. That's not for every exercise in the workout. That's one single rep for the entire workout because it still means you've made more progress than you did from the previous workout. And if you follow this consistent and patient approach, what you'll find is that you'll still be training in a year's time while other people pushing harder are suffering elbow, shoulder, and calf injuries, sidelining them for months at a time. And while we can get by with adding 1 rep per workout in the gym, what do we do with our endurance training? It's actually kind of similar. The general rule for endurance training is don't add more than 10% to your total weekly volume from week to week. And as a further rule, there's no need to keep adding time to your workouts if you're still progressing from however long your training sessions are now. If you're seeing fitness improvement from 30-minute runs, there's no need to make your runs any longer until you stop seeing progress from those 30-minute runs. As an example, it's pretty rare that I give customers runs of more than 45 minutes for more than a year until they stop seeing progress from those runs. The ability to make progress from these shorter sessions is really high if they're targeted and focused each time. Remember, with fitness, you're either building it or spending it. There's no in between. These sessions that test you, make you run harder, faster, see you try for PRs, all of those sessions are spending fitness. If you're trying to build fitness, you want to stay away from that stuff as much as possible and just patiently put money into that savings account over and over and over an extended period of time. But how do you piece all this together? For people under 50, I usually use a simple 3 strength sessions plus 3 endurance sessions per week. For those over 50, it usually drops down to 2 strength sessions and 3 endurance sessions per week, which still keeps me in line with the government guidelines for health and fitness. I know this sounds crazy, but the purpose of training isn't to train more. The purpose of training is to get better, and you can only get better when there's room for adaptation. And that's why as we get older and recovery ability naturally drops, we actually have to remove training, not add to training, so that we can continue adapting and getting better. One of my clients in his 60s was really struggling to see any kind of improvement at all. And one of the first things I did when he came to me was I removed a lot of his hard endurance sessions and I actually cut the number of total sessions per week down. And he's back to making progress again, even in his 60s. Thanks to being coached by a world Ironman champion, I've been a fan of Zone 2 work for about a decade before it became popular with a lot of the influences you see online now. And because of that, I tend to use a lot of moderate work with clients and it allows them to progress, stay injury free, and really soak up a lot of training volume so we can get a big training result. The added benefit of these easy to moderate Zone 2 sessions is they actually enhance recovery, not cost recovery, like a lot of the harder sessions will. And that means You can work hard in the gym today, recover on your run tomorrow, work hard in the gym again the next day, recover on your run, and so on, rather than just constantly beat yourself down with hard work every single day. Now remember, when it comes to strength, we're chasing both maximal strength as well as strength endurance. So for those under 50s, maybe it's 2 maximal strength days and 1 strength endurance day. For the over 50s, that can be 1 maximal strength day and 1 strength endurance day. And when it comes to your endurance sessions, you're probably going to have 1 session a week that's longer than the rest, which is really necessary from an endurance building point of view. From a management perspective, stick it on the weekend when you've got a little bit more spare time, or if you're a shift worker, place it on a day that's your day off so you've got more time to spend on that training session. A pro tip for people: keep your strength endurance day and your longest endurance day separated by as much as possible, because the strength endurance day can cause the most muscle soreness out of any of the sessions for the week. If you have a strength endurance day and roll directly into your longest run, you're going to find that really uncomfortable. And now we've covered the planning, how do you eat so that you maintain high intensity and you don't fall to pieces during training? If you want to be a race car, you can't race on no or limited fuel like you see people trying to do on keto or fasting diets. You need to take every opportunity you can to put as much fuel in the system as possible in the highest quality fuel you can find. And while everyone seems to focus on carbs and electrolytes for endurance training, the reality is that you still need to hit protein requirements so that you allow for muscle recovery in between training sessions. And protein needs are anywhere from 0.7 of a gram per pound up to 1 gram per pound, regardless of where you are in your training cycle. And when it comes to carbs, let's make it really simple. For sessions that last more than 90 minutes, you want to be getting 60 to 80 grams of carbs per hour. So that means your 3-hour ride needs somewhere between 180 and 240 grams of carbohydrates, or up to an extra 1,000 calories for the day. You want to take these carbs in either during training or immediately after training, whichever you find you deal with the best. But the advice I can give you is that learning to put the right amount of fuel in your body while endurance training and racing is the closest thing you're going to get to doping. I've seen so many clients get so much faster simply from getting this fueling question right. They're faster, there's less muscle soreness, and they're able to recover and train with more intensity more often each week. And the only difference to my food intake is on these longer sessions where it's just more convenient to get these calories from gels and bars rather than something like a peanut butter dipped banana, which is just going to be messy to carry around with you. While non-processed single ingredient foods are like putting 98 octane in your body most of the time, the reality for training and racing is that these processed, quick absorbing carbohydrates are really like putting nitrous in. And that gets me back to fasting. With the sheer volumes of food that you'll need to take in to deal with this level of training, a restricted eating window just means the meals are going to be so massive, they're going to be nearly impossible to get down, and one of two things will happen. Either you'll crash and burn in your training and racing, or you'll start not eating enough food and wondering why your training and racing sucks because you're not fueling it properly. It works far better to spread your meals out as much as possible during the day so you can keep the meals as small as possible, which allows you to maintain focus and energy rather than those big dips and troughs you get from big meals that leave you feeling sluggish and tired. And now we've covered how to plan it, how to fuel it, how do you stay on track mentally? I'm not going to sugarcoat this. You've really only got 3 choices. Realize that you're not going to see your old friend group much because when they're out partying, you'll be asleep, and while they're hungover, you'll be up early in training. So you're probably not going to hang out with them very much. The next choice would be that you meet and make new friends with people who share these new interests with you. So now you've got a tribe of people doing the exact same things you are, going to bed early, getting up early to train, and getting together to do healthy activities rather than boozy late nights. And if you don't come to terms with one of these 2 things, the third choice is that you will eventually fall back into your old habits because you become like the people you hang out with. And if you don't have the right tribe to hang out with, you'll just go back to your old tribe. The fitness lifestyle, past 40, is very different to most of the modern world. It's the avoidance of foods that people associate with treats, it's the avoidance of late nights, and it's the avoidance or near complete avoidance of alcohol. But you give up all of these short-term dopamine hits, the late nights, the treat foods, for something much bigger and much more rewarding in the future. And if you don't believe me that health and fitness is the most expensive, luxurious thing you can own, just wait until you get really sick and see how much money you'll spend trying to recover it. Given how few people are genuinely in amazing shape these days, being incredibly healthy and fit is a lot like owning a luxury sports car. Everyone craves it, few are willing to put in the work required to actually purchase one. And from my perspective, after 30 plus years training people, I've never had a single client tell me that they really wish they stayed fatter and less fit. And because so much of training and racing is all about power to weight ratios, if you really want to get in race shape as fast as possible, while not having to go on an extended diet that sees you training at reduced intensities for a long period of time, I made this video right here for you.